to welcome everybody to tonight's candidate forum. And on behalf of the Nashwauk Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you for attending. I'm Lisa Rosemore. I'm president of the Nashwauk Area Chamber of Commerce. I will be moderating tonight's forum. And we're going to first introduce our candidates. We have 2 candidates for mayor, and we have 4 candidates for city council for 2 seats. And unfortunately, one of the council candidates was unable to be with us tonight. So we have Ed Bull. We're going from left to right here. We have Ed Bull, Greg Hablum, Sheila Jensen, Cal Sari, and Andrew Elge.
Hablum with 1 O.
Yes, Hablum with 1 O. Okay. So candidates, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. Cal and Andrew are running for the mayor seat, and then Ed, Greg, and Sheila are running for the city council seats. For tonight's forum, we'll be asking questions which were submitted by our chamber members, and each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the question. We're going to be timing each question, and our chamber treasurer, Trish, will be our timekeeper. Okay, already. She will be holding up a card to let each candidate speaking know when there is 1 minute remaining, 30 seconds remaining, 10 seconds remaining, and when your time is up. And candidates, we would ask that you please do not speak past the allotted time for each question. And if we have enough time, we will take questions from our audience members as well. Audience has some papers and pen over here, so you can write some questions and pass it on to us, and we'll take a peek at them. And so, are there any questions before we get started? Okay.
How many minutes did you say per comment?
Each question is going to have different times, and I will let you know that you have your timer ready. Okay. We have to have, our timekeeper has to get her time up there. So, I can't spell it. You can't keep time. We're a great pair. Okay, the first question is going, and I do want to let you know, you do not have to take the entire allotted time if you don't want to. So, if you think you said enough, that's okay. Just let us know. Okay, 2 minutes for the first question. And our first question is, we'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for the city council. And we'll start with you, Booker.
I'm Ed Bull, live in Nashwauk. I'd like to see more development done up on the city properties and get the businesses going back on Main Street. Get some resident housing being built. See how we can cut the budget so it's not a 10% increase because it has been in the last 4 years. Keep all the apartments going as we got. We need new ones. And it could be a million things out there, but that's about the only major things right now for me. Nice question. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Greg, you're next.
Yeah, Greg Hablum, born and raised on Swan Lake, and attended Nashwauk Keewatin High School, graduated, moved on to college to graduate with a bachelor's degree in business administration from University of Wisconsin. Came back to Nashwauk, and I've lived here ever since. I've been on this council for 16 years, and sometimes you wonder why you do it, but I think you do it because you have a passion for a love for your community, and I think that's the biggest reason. I think if anybody thinks they're going to move mountains when they come in, it's just not the way it is. Just having that passion for your community, and that's where I look at it. So, and we have 5 generations of my family are from Nashwauk. Not that makes a difference, but for me, it's important.
Okay. Sheila.
I'm Sheila Jensen, and I'm a relatively new citizen in Nashwauk. We've been here almost 5 years. At the end of the month, it'll be 5 years. And we live down on 4th Street. And I'm running just because I just want to get involved, and I want to, I have ideas, but I want to learn how it works. I work for the city of Coleraine as the deputy clerk. And so I've got to see a lot of the city government from the clerk's office perspective. And I know nobody's coming in and making giant changes in any kind of a hurry. Government moves slow. And there are 80,000 steps to everything that you want to accomplish. And they all take time and they all take money. And I have been able to see that. So I think my perspective is, I've got some ideas, but I really want to just get involved. And so, I'm not going to change the world overnight, but see what input I can have.
Okay. Cal.
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Cal Sari. I've been privileged to be your mayor in this community the last 4 years. I'd like to take part of my time just to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on. I just wish there was 150 to 200 people here, because that's one of the challenges we have, as you all know, is the difficulty of getting together and really communicating with the people in the community. It isn't like it was 30, 40 years ago where there were so many activities going on that you always had groups where you could meet with people. It's just difficult to get to people. And so I really appreciate the effort being made by the chamber to do this. When I was asked first to come on the council with the intent to kind of look at the mayorship, I told the council, and once I got elected, that I had a little different approach toward government. I don't like the idea of micromanaging. I've worked in government for more than 55 years. I was trained in the leadership positions. I was a supervisor for more than 30 years, and I learned early on through some national academies that I went to that the most effective leaders are those that can train people to be leaders themselves. And that's kind of the perspective that I have toward it. I don't like to micromanage. It's not my job as mayor to do the day-to-day type things on it. But what I committed to the council I would do is I wanted to make Nashwauk a known entity like it was 20, 25 years ago when Bob Fragnino was mayor. He was involved with the legislature with, at that time, Representative Solberg, and Representative Solberg never went anywhere without him. So Nashwauk got to be known. And that's kind of the approach I've taken the last 4 years. I'm involved in a lot of activities. Member of the League of Cities, Rams Association, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, been involved in just a lot of areas. And primarily, I've been a lobbyist at the state legislature for the past 19 years, which I still do have a couple of contracts currently. And I get to know all the legislators. And I've used that time to represent the community, and there's work still to be done. So I'd like to continue that effort.
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. Andrew Elge, born and raised here. Guess part of the reason why I'm running for mayor is to be more with the community, help out, do more stuff for children. A little better, we call it, a little better traffic control or public safety, better streets, better sidewalks. Maybe I could help out the road department. So, thank you.
Right. Okay, our next question for our candidates is, do you have a special project you wish to work on as a council member, and we'd like to hear about it? And Greg, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, actually, I've had a special project probably for about the better part of the last 12 years. And that was focusing on a community center, which Nashwauk does not have. We started with many different plans, including, adding on and renovating the rec center, putting up a standalone building somewhere else. It really seemed like every time we got close to making any kind of a decision, funding would dry up. IRRB or any federal funding, or maybe the state bonding bill. And I always vowed to the taxpayers of the community that I would never put a project like that on their shoulders, the cost of it, because just a simple building right now is approximately 10 to 12 million. And, you know, you're lucky if you can get 60% financing, which means the balance is going to be put on the taxpayers. And that accounts for approximately $75,000 payment for every $1 million that we bond for as a city. So I'm still passionate in the fact that I want to continue to follow that, but I also want to follow it in a way that's practical and, you know, back up and look at our current buildings. There's been a lot of talk about this building, and we need to, you know, put up a new building which would have city offices and council chambers. People seem to forget what this building is about. This isn't just City Hall. This is the Soldier Memorial. And I think that's really important to our community, especially, you know, those of us who are older, you know, and I don't think that vacating this facility is going to be practical. So my focus is, you know, if we're not going to have a community center or renovate something else, I want to focus on fixing the buildings we have and maintaining them.
All right, Sheila.
I will say I don't have any specific project or special project in mind. I'm too new. I want to learn what's been happening and have input on those things. I would say that my focus, though, is always fiscal responsibility and transparency. Those things are important to me, and making sure that, you know, things are applied evenly to everyone so that everyone in the community is treated the same, and those things are important to me.
Hey. Al.
Thank you. When I first ran for mayor, as Greg indicated, if you might remember 4 years ago, my priority was why don't we have a community center in Nashwauk? And that was the focus of where I was going. It doesn't take you long to get on the city council and sit at this chamber and kind of learn that there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of needs in the community, and it all comes down to the matter, what can we afford to do? We've continued to work on the community center. We've not never give up on that. Still like to see that someday, but there are other priorities that have come up. Greg's kind of mentioned a little bit of it. The need for the public safety complex is outdated. The rec building needs to have some repairs and needs to be updated. And you can't believe it. I don't know how many people understand that 100-year-old building that our street crew is in down here is in deplorable condition. It's got a hole in the roof where water can come right through, and we expect our staff to work with that. I mean, so our priorities change with it. However, my top priority at this point that we're working on right now is retaining the ambulance service in this community. And I'll talk about that a little later because that concerns me. 5 years ago, we had $500,000 of revenue at the end of the year in that ambulance service. Today, we're going broke with it. And we're not alone. Every community is dealing with this. Today, I've met with Congressman Stauber and talked about this exact thing and told him we need to have federal intervention. And we need to change the Medicare and Medicaid formulas that they're using to pay back EMS and ambulance services for the work they do with it. So that's a top priority to me, is work on that. Thank you.
Hey. Andrew.
No special projects right off the top. I just agree with Greg and Cal. Our buildings are old and they need maintenance. Definitely the city crew. And there's a lot to learn here, so.
Booker.
Well, they're talking about the city garage got a hole in the roof. I can't believe they haven't fixed it yet. Even put a patch over so the water does not run through it. Second of all, I know we put in a grant for 3rd Street. That's the only street we haven't done, put new water and sewer line down right now. Some alleys are in tough shape in Nashwauk. We should go back like we did 10 years ago, and what alleys has to be redone. Assess the people like we did before, and let's get the alleys up in good shape. The ambulance service, you don't want to lose it. It's always been here. You don't want to wait for Grand Rapids or Haven to come here. And the other thing is, there's a couple empty buildings for the thing, like the hardware store. I talked to Scott Smith before he bought it 2 months ago. Well, he started talking to these people that have these buildings here in town and everything else. There's other ones. I'm working with 2 people right now on David Laughlin's building. I can't say who they are until they make the announcements. That's what I'll have to say right now.
Hey. All right. So our next question is again going to be 2 minutes. The city is currently facing an approximate $78,000 budget deficit going into the next year. What do you feel is the best way to address this deficit? And Sheila, we're going to start with you.
Okay, well, I don't know. But there are, every city, I think, especially small cities, struggle with budget. Nobody wants to raise taxes on people, but you also have obligations. It's not just wages, but you have wages and benefits, and insurance and retirement. The obligations are big. And people generally want services, but they also don't want to pay more. And as costs go up, how do you balance that? I know that in Coleraine, there was a budget for 2022, but who would have foreseen that gas was going to cost as much as it costs? So obviously our street public works department and our PD are way over budget for gasoline and fuel. Unforeseeable. Nobody knew that was going to happen. So it's a struggle all the time. I don't know what the answer is for Nashwauk, but I'm certainly interested in hearing and certainly to look and see, is there any fluff? I don't know. Maybe there isn't. Then what do you do? It's a serious and difficult question.
Hey, Cal.
I'll talk in general terms about the budget and give rough figures. We operate in our community operating budget of about 1.8 million, $1,800,000. Actually, we're down to about $57,000 that we need to make up yet from the requests we had in the proposed 2023 budget that we have. So it isn't an enormous, serious problem. That is, we've had several meetings. We're going to have to hold several more to do it. We're not alone because of the pandemic and everything else. Everybody's having this kind of problem, but if we can make up that $55,000 roughly, I think pretty easily by a couple of meetings. One of the areas we've looked at, quote, very seriously, which we have already brought to the Chamber of Commerce, is that we put out a lot of money every year in this community as a council for the 4th of July celebration. Every single one of us to a person totally supports the idea of the 4th of July celebration, need to have it. But we put a lot of money in. We've dedicated $20,000 into that. We've come to Chamber and says, maybe it's time for the council not to fund that. We've got to find a different funding mechanism for those kind of things. That's an example of some things we'll look at to cut in. Cutting back on new purchases and new supplies is another way we can do that. But I don't think $55,000 is an enormous issue for us. I see another meeting or two of the council and we'll have a balanced budget.
Andrew.
Kind of agree with Cal there. I think it's something that the city can work on together and come to terms and figure out where we can cut stuff and get that budget down to zero deficit. So.
Well, number one issue, you guys are short, going to Cal at $57,000 right now. Under the mayor and council on your budget, you guys are proposing a $60,000 for OPEC. That's a retirement fund that probably the retired guys are going. Right now, you guys are sitting with over close to $300,000 in that fund. You could take the whole $57,000 off the mayor and council budget and take the money out of the OPEC, balance your budget. That's all I have to say right now.
Okay, well, budgets, no matter how big they are or how small they are, no matter how big your community is or how small your community is, it boils down to two things: revenue and expenditures. So you either got to find more revenue or you got to get rid of expenditures. And that's the process that we go through in the budget process. I think that I would like to make it clear that the ambulance service is not in any danger of leaving this community. Even if the city of Nashwauk doesn't own it, there are ways to ensure that service stays in this community. And the way I understand it is the licensing for the ambulance requires it to be in this community because of the territory that's laid out, the MS territory. And as far as, the ambulance when we're talking revenue and expenditures, you know, a lot of people don't know right now, but our ambulance, if it continues to go the way it is right now, it's approximately, it's going to be in the area, could go as much as 100,000 in the hole this year. So we talk about budgeting 56,000 or picking on, you know, a $25,000 item in our budget when we're supporting and we're supplying another part of our city that is losing up to 100,000. And this is not something that's uncommon for ambulance services. It's been like that for about the last 35 years because of the way the payments are from insurance companies, Medicare and Medicaid. You're locked in. If you have a $1,200 run, Medicare, Medicaid only gives you $250. So all of a sudden you're immediately in the hole because you got to pay for the rig, you got to pay for the staff. So there's a lot more to it than just that. And I've always said that if this city cannot run that service at least at a break even, then we need to be out of the business. We need to have somebody else do that. So that's how, those are just some of the things that I would look at in the budget.
Okay. So driving through town, there's a lot of empty storefronts, closed businesses. What do you feel is the city's role in revitalizing the business climate in Nashwauk? And 2 minutes, and we'll start with Cal.
That's an obvious question. That's a concern for everyone in every community that they have is not having vacant storefronts, and economic development and community restoration is on the minds of every one of us, and we work with it every day. I think of our council and our city administrator has done a real good job of having regular conversations with other agencies such as the county and over in Grand Rapids, a lot of CETA and a lot of other similar type agencies like that do provide funding and assistance to communities to enhance community development. And it takes community development. This is going to be a thriving community because of the mining situation, and the mines will go. We've dealt with, and I know people chuckle and say, you've been saying that for 17 years, and that's true. We wait in this community, but do not give up hope. That mine is going to go. There's going to be, somebody's going to operate that mine. That ore is there. It's valuable ore. It's a half-built thing. It's going to go. And once that economic development comes, then the restoration and development of the rest of the economic features in the community is going to fall into place itself. But we can't forget that. We got to continue to work on it. That's a daily item on our agenda.
Andrew.
Yeah, I agree with Cal. As soon as we call it whatever you want, I'll call it SR. Whether Cliffs buys it, somebody buys it and gets it going, it's going to bring lots of business to this town, and we can't give up hope on it.
Booker.
Well, take us back years ago, probably 10 years ago. We used to have a consultant that came in, met with the business people once a month. And when they were gonna put like the new bank out here on the east side of town, well, John Fiedel was our consultant then. Well, he knew enough people around here and everything else. He brought them in and that got everything going out there a little bit faster. And I figured some way between the city and the chamber, you should be able to hire another consultant like that. Ely, you got 2 of them up there right now, and you see what Ely's doing, with just what the guys bringing into the town and everything else. I'm not gonna say you're gonna get 20 new business tomorrow, but you have to have somebody going out there and doing this work for you. We can sit here as a city council, you can sit at a chamber. You don't know enough people. You gotta know the people that used to live in Nashwauk are willing to come back. That's it.
Right.
Well, that's a question that probably every small community the size of Nashwauk and even larger than Nashwauk has been asking that same question, at least since I've been involved with this community for the last 35 years and probably longer than that. I used to be on the Nashwauk Development Corporation. You know, the issue is that, you know, a lot of those company decisions, bringing businesses into town and so forth, you know, the big ones, you know, like the taconite industry and anything else, you know, they look at 2 things. They're going to look at resources and or people. And if they don't have the resource here, if they don't have the staff or the people in the area, it's going to be difficult. I mean, Rapids has a hard time focusing on getting, these businesses for reasons that are different than Nashwauk. But an example where the city has worked in the past with businesses is when I first came on to the council, we had a project that was starting out at, was the assisted living. And that assisted living at the time, the council previous, when I was on, had it set up to be a TIF. So if anybody knows what a TIF is, it's tax increment financing. So the city wasn't gonna see a single tax dollar for approximately 30 years if they would have entered into that TIF. But when the new council came in, we backed out, we pulled out of it, and it was within a month. We had an investor in there. We didn't have to pay anything for it. We didn't have to do anything, but working with those people like that and making it better for the city of Nashwauk, because that's a business. Whether you think it's not, it is, I mean, it's not a downtown business. And I think the city has also done a good job on the council in doing a lot of renovating on the downtown to try and keep it looking as good as we can, because that's where most of your businesses are going to be located at. And I think that we just need to continue with the same point of view and vision.
Well, I have to tell you that this is the smallest town that I've ever lived in. And I frankly love the fact that everything's walkable. I think it's just great. But it would be really great, wouldn't it, if there were even more things that you could access just right within a couple of miles. It's a really neat experience, and something I've never lived in a small town before. And we haven't lived in giant towns either. Maybe, I don't know how many does Monticello, we lived there for 30 years. I don't know how many people are at 15,000. I mean, not huge. And I don't have any desire to go back even to that big of a town. I like the size, it's great. I don't have any genius plans, but I'm really interested in learning what's been done so far, and maybe I have some input. It would be honestly a learning thing for me at the beginning, because I need to know what's already been done and what's been tried, and maybe there are some new ideas.
Okay. All right. Whatever you want to call it, Minnesota Steel, SR Steel Minnesota, Masati Metallics. We had to ask about it. SR Steel broke ground in 2008 with the promise of hundreds of high-paying jobs for the area, as well as spin-off jobs. However, today the Stout project, now known as Masati Metallics, owes $2.3 million in back taxes. Nearly $700,000 of that is owed to the city of Nashwauk. A recent court ruling also upheld the Minnesota DNR revoking mineral leases for the project. What do you think the city's role, if any, should be in the project? And I'm going to give 3 minutes each for this. And so this is your chance to talk about the project and what you think needs to be done with it. And Andrew, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think we need to get it together at the Minnesota DNR and not release those permits back to whatever you want to call it. I'm going to stay with SR because that's what it actually is. They just changed names 3 times. We need to get them to give them permits to an established
supporting businesses that are coming into the community. And I think that the city of Nashwauk and past councils have done more than their part in supporting this project and doing everything we can in the capacity that we have to support the project. But there comes a time where I felt that, I owed it to you guys as taxpayers in this community to bring it to light that, they were not paying their real estate taxes. And that was, approximately, I think, don't quote me, but I think it was about 1.2 million that they owed the city of Nashwauk. So we're wondering why we're having budget problems. There's a big piece of it right there. And I had floated the idea that we need to get this out to people. And then that turned into sending a letter to the DNR commissioner, sending a letter to the governor, to all the federal elected officials, the state elected officials. And the day after that letter went out, it hadn't gone out to everybody, but we had people from that company calling saying, please don't send it out. No, enough's enough. We've heard enough promises. Let's move forward regardless of who is going to do it. Let's put somebody in there. Let somebody do that project who's willing to do it. Now, those decisions aren't up to the city of Nashwauk. Those are going to be decisions that will be up to the DNR and the state of Minnesota because of the leases and because of the mineral rights. But I think that this city has more than supported this project. And frankly, I'm just like a lot of people, I'm tired of the promises. So
Interesting.
that's the truth.
Well, all of this mining stuff is new to us, as we came up here, and we are enjoying the process of kayaking on abandoned pits and looking at all the history I love. And again, I'm just excited to learn more from the inside, more than what you can read in the paper probably, and just find out what is happening and if there's anything else that can be done. I'm sure that the city council and the mayors who've been in office since this started have done, I'm sure, everything that they can do. Like Greg said, it's not up to the city to decide many of these things. So there isn't, hands are tied and patience is of the essence. And I think everybody's getting weary of it from what I hear, and everyone will be thrilled when it finally gets rolling and those promised jobs actually come back to town. It will make a huge difference.
This is a very complicated process that we have to go through, and the whole issue of this mine is not easily resolved. And that's why it's hung on for so many years. In my role as mayor here, I've been privileged to be within a small circle of people that have continued negotiations and discussions, not only with Wasabi Metallics, who is the owner of the land, financially SR is behind it, and with state officials as well, the Minnesota DNR and the governor's office. We've continued to work. Our council has been supportive year after year, and we've told Wasabi Metallics knows that as a council, as long as you own that property in town, we support you. All we want, we don't care who operates it, what company gets it. As long as I want a company to come in to complete that plant and to start production of mining. They can start the construction of mining, we're going to be in business. In order to do that, they need to pay their back tax before they do anything. I'm not privy to give you information tonight. By next week, I expect to have a press conference called again with some news about the future of Wasabi Metallics. When Greg mentioned the letter that we sent first from the council, we did get a reaction immediately. They made a partial payment of $450,000 to the county. When we had the public press conference that I called following that, saying we had enough, something's got to happen. 2 days later, we got another $450,000 payment made. So they need to find the money. Obviously, SR doesn't have the money behind it. It needs financial backing to make this project go. They've continued to work on it in good faith. We've given the opportunity to do that. We have, however, as Greg has said it, we have let them know in no uncertain terms that enough is enough. The people of Nashwauk, the people of Itasca County have waited long enough. This is the end. You're either going to produce, If the taxes aren't brought up to date, so that we can go to the governor and say, let's work this out somewhere to get this thing operating again. If that isn't done, we will tell them that we'll no longer support that effort with it and that they're gonna have to look at selling that property to bring in a corporation that can really mine that. It's complicated. It's not easy. There's lawsuits that are involved in this process as well that we don't have any control over. So there's very little we can do as a city except to continue our efforts. Say we support you, but you gotta make this go. So that's what we're continuing to work on. And I promise you, we should have some kind of, I'm hoping we can have a news report to you next week. And I say next week only because that's when tax statements are due on the 17th of October. Well, that's my secret date.
Okay. All right, there's a follow-up question to this and there you go. 2 minutes. It's a follow-up. Should the city count on future tax revenue from Misabi Metallics, formerly known as SR Steel, or plan the city budget without those funds? What did I start with last time?
They started.
Okay,
First of all, if,
sorry.
wait, no, the city council puts a levy out. You can't, if you're gonna, they're gonna pay their fair share no matter what. It's pretty hard, the only way they're gonna eliminate their share of any taxes or anything else once they produce taconite pellets come out of there. Once the pellets come out of there, they don't pay any more property tax. And anything the city levies, like this year, they levied over $600,000, they'll be put on all the business and residents in this town. And that's what I'll have to say on it, because there's nothing else to say about it. If anybody pays taxes, you live in town. So properties in the city limits of Nashwauk, they pay their fair share. And Mr. Eaton.
Well, I think that, there's going to be obviously a lot of debate in reference to these real estate taxes and do you count on it for your revenue? Well, I don't think you can count on revenue. That's not revenue yet. I mean, it's just a projection, just like a budget. It's just a budget. So, the problem is that the city of Nashwauk, since this project has began, has implemented and invested in a lot of stuff that is now costing us money to maintain, anywhere from water lines to sewer lines to substations to electrical. And now that is laying on us to continue to maintain that. So, I kind of look at it two-pronged. We can't count on it, or I don't think we are counting on it. But at the same time, if they owe taxes, then they need to pay them, because that money will help us to maintain those things that we added onto this community to accommodate them. And, like Booker said, once they start producing, their taxes go away. They pay a production tax per ton instead of a tax on the leases. It's just like our timber industry. They pay what's called a tree growth. We used to call it tree growth. Now it's called Sustainable Forest Incentive Act, where the big companies didn't have to pay real estate taxes. They actually got money from the state to put it in tree growth, and that was to manage it for timber, for the timber industry. As soon as it comes out of tree growth, they have to pay taxes. It's kind of the same thing, but I don't think that you can count on that for revenue when we don't have it in hand. And as long as I remember, the councils now, the council now, and the councils in the past have taken that approach.
And Sheila.
I would say that it's simply as a budgetary thing, you can't count money that you don't have. And so, I mean, fiscal responsibility would certainly dictate that you don't count on money that you may or may not get, and historically so far have not gotten it. So just out of a sense of being careful and thoughtful, I would say, no, you can't budget on money you don't have.
I think all the preceding comments have kind of really hit the nail on the head and where you're at with that. It's again, a complicated issue that you work with when you're paying taxes. Greg did a good job of explaining It's property taxes now only because Masabi Metallics actually owns the land that's in the city. So we are obligated by law to levy for that property, but whether we get that money or not, you can't spend money you don't have. So we run in a deficit of a couple million. We can't operate a city budget on a deficit of $2 million. In fact, we're not gonna go into deficit at all with it. So it's a complicated issue on how you do that. We don't spend the money we don't have, but boy, we could sure make a better, lot more improvements to the cities if we had them paying regular taxes. And let's remember when we go in, once they start to mine, whatever company goes in to do that, the property tax goes away and it becomes a production tax, as Greg was saying. The concern that we have, if it goes in a production tax and somebody starts to mine that, they come in here, they take this ore out of here, they put it on the car, and let's say they ship it to Mountain Iron. We don't get a single dollar for that in Itasca County or the city of Nashwauk because the production is taking place in Mountain Iron, so St. Louis County would get all that money. So if that were to happen with new companies coming in, we've got to be on our guard to be prepared to deal with that. And I've had several discussions again with legal counsel and with engineers to make sure that our community is protected with it. And I can guarantee you that as long as I'm there in the existing council that you have, that's the top priority, is to make sure that we're covered for that. But those are issues that we're going to have to contend with.
Andrew, you're up.
Yeah, plan without it for now. I mean, obviously they have been, so I don't see where else we could go with that.
All right.
Great.
The rec building, keep in mind, these are a lot of questions that were submitted by members here. So, okay, the rec building is past its prime. Kids don't seem to be using it much anymore. What do you think should be done with the rec building? And Greg, we'll start with you.
Minutes? Boy. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of components of the rec building that are obviously, past its prime. But it doesn't mean that the building is structurally unsound. And I think that, a lot of people think that because maybe the exterior looks drabby or some of the stuff inside looks drabby, that the building is past its prime. It really isn't. I mean, when we were doing studies for the new community center, which potentially would be attached to it, we had engineers come in, structural engineers, to assess the building. It's fine. Where it needs work, and we've talked about this, and again, where you're going to make the improvements, you need money to do that. Everything costs money. And when we're trying to balance a budget now, it's pretty tough to go and do some of these upgrades. But, we had somebody go through the building and a contractor and list all of the issues we have. We had our street lead, Tom Martier, help us with what needs to be done, everything from electrical to ventilation. And, so that stuff has been looked at. So I don't think that it's past its prime. I think it's still useful. And I think it's still a great building in this community, even though it may kind of look drabby. So, but yeah.
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 Yeah, that's great information to know. I'm a building conservation fan. I don't like getting rid of things just because they've got a few years on them. I visited my sister in Switzerland years ago, and the building she lived in was built in 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I mean, Europeans and other cultures know how to maintain things. And I think that's lacking. Too often we get the idea that newer and shinier is the best thing. I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I'd love to see some cosmetic, freshening at the rec center, but it costs money. Even to just, let's say, let's just paint the exterior. Well, I don't even know if you can paint those buildings, but just to do that, that's probably thousands and thousands of dollars of materials and manpower. So yeah, it'd be great to spruce things up, but I'm more concerned about functionality, and it seems to be functional, than I am about fancy new, so.
We've completed those plans on what needs to be done at the rec building. The rec building is an asset to the community. It could even be a greater asset, but it costs money to do those things. The studies that we've had, the plans that we've had are all in place, but it takes money. In my contacts down in St. Paul and my dealing with legislators, I've continued to advocate on behalf of finding some dollars that would help with us. In fact, to be honest with you, we've even approached now the Minnesota Wild, who often give a lot of money into communities for ice arenas. And I know Councillor Gangle has always been an advocate of putting an ice machine in here and just think how much more ice time we could sell with it. But that's an enormous cost to us. It would probably increase $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year with it. But Minnesota Wild do some of those things in small communities. So we haven't given up on that. It's a matter of finding the dollars, and that's been part of my role as mayor, is to go down and continue to talk on behalf of the city. The rec is wondering, I say, geez, it sure would be nice to fix that up here. We've got some studies that if you people want to come and look at it, to help us with it, but we won't give up on it, but we just have to find the funding to do it.
Hey, Andrew.
Yeah, I agree. I like the rec. I think it's good for the community. I don't think it's that bad. Yeah, it needs a paint job, but parking lot's a little out of shape, but we just built a building for Itasca County, well, not me, a Swan River garage. Cost us $1.3 million, and that was, I believe, 60 by 100. So to rebuild something like that or to build again is not any cheaper. I think we need to keep that building and just do the upkeep to it when the funding's there.
Hey. One of the biggest challenges facing a lot of our small cities is local government aid.
Mhm.
Would you share your views on dealing with government aid, local government aid, also known as LGA? And Sheila, we're going to start with you.
Well, I don't know anything about it, so I don't have much of an opinion about it. I do hear the city clerk in Coleraine talking about the IRRR and the Blandon Foundation and different places where funding is available. And I know it's quite a process, applications, and I mean, all of it's a lot of work. So I don't know much about it, but certainly willing to learn, and have just heard on the periphery what that's about. So I don't know.
Hey, Cal.
LGA funding is one of the primary areas where we seek state assistance in operating city government. It's a complicated formula, again, that they've used for years and years, does not work. In fact, the legislature can go and increase LGA funding. And then when you look at the money that the city of Nashwauk gets, which is less money than we got the previous year, because our penalty clause is built in. It depends if you're bringing in grants and aids, as we have in our community, you get penalized for that with some LGA funding. So you don't necessarily even get the increase with it. Sitting on the policy board again for the League of Cities, that's been a topic of discussion every single year that I've been there for the last 4 years. It is on again this year. The Policy Committee for Economic Growth in Communities has passed a resolution that the League of Cities advocates, and we've already have people working from the League of Cities with legislators to draft legislation to change the whole formula of how LGA is formulated in the communities. So we are hopeful that we can get to a situation where we do an increase in LGA funding, and within the legislature, every community gets added funds to it. And we'll continue to work on it. And that's one of the priority items in the League of Cities that we all advocate for. The Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, which represents smaller cities like us, which we also participate in, is also an advocate that is bought on with that. So we are working on it. LGA is important, and the formula's got to be changed. And we'll continue to work on that. And I'm hopeful that that can bring in added dollars. It won't solve all our problems, but it will give us increased funding.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. It's something we got to look into, and that's all I have.
And Booker, I owe you an apology. I skipped you on the rec center question, so you're gonna get, I apologize, I'm very sorry. So we're going to give you double time to answer both the rec.
That was very fun. I'm not worried about it.
Both the rec center and the LGA questions, so have at it.
Hey, the rec center been there almost 40 years. Knowledge. Only thing you have to do, you guys always have a complaint springtime of the year for show the parking lot back there. Need some kind of tire or something else. Maybe there's some way. It was pretty late this year to do anything, but you should have got one of these guys that grinding up the highway to put on the used tire on the back half back there. Or else order enough class 5 to get that part done. Otherwise, the building is good enough for Nashwauk. There's been weddings down there, been funerals down there. They have no trouble. They got enough chairs and tables. Halloween party used to be there all the time. Used to have a lot of things down there. Kids were down there and everything else. But you have to have somebody to start these programs to make them work. That's all I've got to say on that. And with the other, on the LGA, well, that's just money from the state of Minnesota as part of your budget. Ain't much you do anything different. If they send you $100,000, you can make up the difference. They send you $600,000, maybe it's the less you have to levy for. That's about all I can say on that. I don't have the figures in front of me on these funds, so I can't tell you anything about it.
Okay. All right, a little bit of public works question.
Did you answer that
Yeah,
question?
I'll answer the LGA before you go on. That's okay. She also spelt my name wrong too, but I'm not gonna let her forget it. No, I think that, as you all have learned, that LG is local government aid. I think there is something we can do. And, it's a real big uphill battle, but, that money comes from the state. So, as, Mr. Balf commented and as, Cal commented, that's set by the state and set by these equations, but, it sounds cliche-ish, but you need to get involved with your state senators and your state representatives. They're the ones who change it. And that's going to be, at least at this point in time, the most effective way to try and make change, other than, having a professional lobbyist that will, work on behalf of small cities. And even they have a difficult time. But I think that we have to remember when we're electing these officials in these positions that, that's an issue for small towns. It's a big issue. And it has been an issue since I've been here because, as Cal said, they could increase the LGA in Minnesota, but you know what? Ours is decreased because of the way the formulation is. So, contact your elected officials. That would be the biggest thing I would do.
Okay. And I'll make sure everybody gets a chance to answer this next question, okay? So, what are some ways that the city could raise revenue without raising taxes? And Cal, we're gonna start with you.
I wish I knew the answer to that. Producing new revenue is always something that's on our mind. As we look to do with it. We talk about economic development. We talk about our work with CETA, talk about our involvement with the county and working on recreation areas. Those enhancing recreational possibilities, whether it's the trail possibilities or even the golf disc thing that we have, we're talking about the mountain bike trail here that ARDC has given us initial money to do a study on. Those things all can enhance the community and get people involved in the community and enhance our revenue. So that I think that's the secret. That's what we have to continue to work on is those avenues to bring activity into the community and programs that will bring people into our community and make this a destination rather than just a pass through with it. And again, it's not easy, but I wish we had easy answers to do that. I think things become easier as we begin to get new businesses that start in the community, I think that just makes everything grow. I think even the fact of your existing buildings, when you build new buildings and you come up with a new program, people get excited about that. We're gonna have a new convenience store in town. People get excited just because it's new. You know, it attracts interest, it attracts people from the outside that are thinking about going into business. I've heard a couple different voices that are looking at, geez, I'd like to go into business, maybe start a little restaurant in town. You know, we totally support those type of concepts, but that's what we need. Those are the revenue producers with it. We can't continue to tax the people to death. We understand that. We've got to be sensitive to the needs of people, but we have to have a budget that operates too. So that I think the council as a whole has done a tremendous job. I appreciate the work that they've done. We don't always agree, but we can reach consensus with it. We can't tax the people to death. We got to be sensitive where it is, at the same time raising the funds to at least continue to provide you the services that you expect and that I say you deserve to have.
Hey. Andrew.
I don't have no answer for that. Maybe fundraisers, keeping the business that you do have, helping them out would be where I would go with that.
Booker.
Well, I don't have much more to say on that because until you get some more, to get money, you have to have other businesses in town or new homes to drop the levy or something else. Otherwise, ain't much more where you can get any money from. That's what, yeah, right now, that's all I have to say on that.
Great.
Well, yeah, obviously, revenue is, going to be something that we're always looking at, but I think that at least the taxpayers, residents of this community, I want them to understand that, this big sewer project that we're doing, this went through a long process and both Cal and Mr. Balf were on that joint powers board, but the current council insisted on that facility out there remains in Nashwauk's ownership. And when in fact it wasn't. When it first started, about half of that facility was owned by the Joint Powers Board, which is 3 different communities. And our Joint Powers Board, they ended up getting the other 2 communities to understand that, that system is ours. We started it. We want to keep it that way. Well, that's it. And the biggest reason that I was always pushing for it is it's a revenue generator. It has the possibility to become another avenue of revenue for the city of Nashwauk, because once the communities are hooked up, they're responsible for everything up to our sewer plant. And then we charge them for every gallon of sewer that goes into that system. So it's potentially a revenue, additional revenue for the city. And I think that the city council did a good job at the time, making sure that that was protected for you. And, that is one of our largest. We tried to tackle the problem with transfers for our ambulance service, but since we don't have a hospital in our primary service area, we are unable to control the transfers that we get and we don't get. And so Hibbing takes most of them because they got a hospital, the Hibbing ambulance. Grand Rapids takes most of them out of Grand Rapids because they have a hospital in their territory. So, thank you.
Sheila.
Can you remind me of the question? I got so much great information listening over here. I forgot what the question was.
Yeah.
Oh, raise revenue without raising taxes. Well, I don't know off the top of my head, except that we were having a conversation over at MJ's about the 4th of July.
Mhm.
And just how can maybe the chamber and the city work together to have, spread that cost burden out. And just, I do have some ideas about that. I don't know what's been tried before, or maybe some old idea could be tried again under a different, circumstances maybe are different now. So I do have some ideas about maybe ways to lessen the burden on the city for those things, including, how much the city spends when the chamber has an event at the home show. I was shocked how much money the city spends on that. I mean, when you think about it, I guess of course makes complete sense, but I just had never thought about it. I mean, and it's a benefit to the city. So it's not an unrealistic or unreasonable expenditure, but I was surprised. Everything costs way more than you think it costs. And it's going to cost more next year than it cost this year. And so I don't have any magic solution. I don't have a money tree. But I am interested in discovering what's been tried, and maybe we can come up with some other small thing to make a little bit of a difference.
We're going to have one more question from the chamber, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So this is going to be our last timed question. And that is, do you have any plans for improving city streets and alleys? And Andrew, we'll start with you.
It takes funding, so you gotta really look into it, but I think we could do a better job at making sure they don't get to the condition they're in by filling a pothole instead of driving over it 55 times in one day and every time that pothole opens up, you just gotta put more patch in it. Thank you.
Booker.
Same thing I said on open statement was, you're gonna do the alleys or anything else, go back to where we did for assessment, or even maybe when natural gas comes in, how they tear up the alleys, instead of just repairing the patch, make them do the whole alley. And for the streets, we put a grant in to do 3rd Street. We were denied for the grant on it for the time being. Till we get enough money in public utilities fund to do the water and sewer. So now we're tearing up the whole 3rd Street to go sidewalk to sidewalk. Until we can pay out some other stuff. Like public utilities, we got a thing right now, we have put a new computer system up there to control the water up there for the whole town and everything else is $200,000. We haven't sat down how we're gonna pay for it yet. So there's a lot of things that are sitting out there. What can we do and what we can't do? That's about all I have to say right now. Go ahead, Mr. Eagle.
Well, in the 16 years that I've been here, we've always tried to keep on track with a plan for our streets and our avenues. And at the same time, just not, running a layer of asphalt over them, because most of those areas we needed to first repair or replace water lines and sewer lines, because some of them are still the old clay tile. And, to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of putting asphalt over a street that does have a few potholes and bumps in it, or a lot of potholes and bumps in it, however you want to say it, is kind of, in a way, it's wasting a lot of money, wasting a lot of resources. So the council in the past has tried to prioritize, when you're going to do a project like the PUC, when they're putting a grant in, they want to make sure that if we're going to do the street, we're able to do that infrastructure, because that infrastructure is almost as important as the street itself. And I will say, and I am defending Nashwauk a little bit, and a lot of you are going to disagree with me, but I spent the last 35 years as a real estate appraiser, traveling every community in this region, all the way from International Falls down to McGregor and over to Bemidji. And I will tell you, drive around in some of those communities and see what their streets are like, and still, I think we've done a pretty good job. Most of the streets that we've done and the infrastructure we've done, you might say it might be a mistake, but we did for cash. We didn't assess the taxpayers in the community, which we could, and I'm really not in favor of assessments at this point. But I think that we've done a good job about half of the community. I think about half of it's done. And the projects are laid out for the next 5 to 6 years. Now, there again, you got to have money. So.
Interesting. I don't know. I say that a lot tonight because I'm brand new. I don't know a lot about how all this works, but it's fascinating to me, and I'm enjoying the explanations, and I would really relish the opportunity to get in there and learn more about all the details about all these things. I do have a question. What is the deal with the road by Cheryl Gangel's house? what is that giant hump in the middle of the road? It's so strange. I don't know what that is. But as much as anybody, I'd like to not have potholes, but like everything else, it all costs money. And I do agree with prioritizing, doing the whole job bottom up. That makes sense to me, that you would fix what needs fixing, modernize what needs to be modernized before you worry about the surface. That makes a lot of sense.
We do have a comprehensive plan in Nashwauk. We've had for years. I'd like to have that updated, as they say, at least every 5 years. I've asked that we do it more often. And all that does is prioritize work that needs to be done. For instance, we have agreed that our next priority is 3rd Street. It's got to be redone, and that just follows up with what we've done on 1st Street. We know there are needs in a lot of areas in town. We know there's needs on the new addition that never were even addressed when it was first built. So those things are all put on a comprehensive plan that's there. Again, it comes down to having dollars. Since 2019, when I became mayor, and I said my priority was to go out and to work in these other areas with these agencies and with the legislature, both senators and representatives and people throughout the state on it. We brought in almost $10 million into this community. $10 million. It was $9,952,000 in February of this year. We're going to bring in more money in this town. That's what I see my role as mayor has been, to represent the community down there in St. Paul, always seeking those dollars that come with it. These comprehensive plans are good, but in order to get state money from or grants or aids from anything with it, you have to have the shovel ready. You have to have homework done and a plan in place and ready to go with it. That's what I see my role as mayor in representing our council, is to represent them down there and continue to look for those kind of fundings that come in. Once we get those fundings, we'll continue on with our comprehensive plan. We got to review it every year so that we can update it and make changes where they need to be. Things happen, and that's when we got to make changes.
All right. So we do have some audience members here, and does anyone want to ask questions of one or more of the candidates? Yes.
Thoughts on term limits? Agree with them or not, and why?
What's the,
Thoughts on term limits for the council and mayor? Agree or disagree, and why?
Start with you, Booker.
I'm thinking, sometimes it's a good, well, I agree and I disagree with you. Sometimes you get a good councilor and is willing to work with you and get things done in Nashwauk. You get another councilor in there and they don't do anything. You don't see no major repairs or nothing in town for how many years until you get a new council in. So you could be either way. I can't say I'm favored for a term limit or not. So if you do good, you should be in there. But if you don't do it, people got the choice to vote somebody out every 2 years. So that's all I can say on that part. I can't say anything more. Mr. Abel.
Yeah, I think, that obviously cuts both ways. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if they had term limits, but I also think that if you just take notice and if you participate in your community, in your area, in any volunteer capacity, you will see that you can't get people anymore. You just can't get people to run for office. You can't get people to volunteer for the rec board. You can't get people to volunteer for most anything. And I'm happy. I'm glad that we have people running for the council. Win or lose for me, I'll be happy, because that's what you need. Is you need people that are interested in the process. And I've been here long enough where it's not going to hurt my feelings if I don't make it. But at the same time, I feel you have this feeling of, you have unfinished work. And maybe that's always the way it's going to be. But so, yeah, I'm not going to waffle on either side of the fence, but it cuts both ways. And at this point in time, if you can get a good person in elected office or a volunteer, hang on to them. So.
I would say I'm generally in favor of term limits on every level. I think Congress on the national level needs term limits in the worst way. At this level, I think it's what Ed said, you know, it'd be nice to keep the good ones and get rid of the ones that aren't so good. That's what voting's for, right? And that's what the process is. So if you like the people that are doing a good job, keep voting them in. And if some aren't really cutting the mustard, then you vote them out. So I think that's how it works. Yeah, that's how it works.
I've always been an advocate of term limits. Again, Sheila mentioned particularly with Congress and even the state of Minnesota. I'm also an advocate of limits on seniority, do away with seniority within the legislature. Just because you've been there for 35 years or something doesn't mean you should chair a committee. It's how they're getting the job done. On the local level, these are good points that they bring up. We have difficulty getting people involved, want to participate with it. I'm so glad that we had people, so we can have a forum tonight. We had people that want to run for these offices because we don't see that often. So I give you credit and I thank you for taking the time and having the interest to want to be a part of your community. And we'd wish that more people would do that and come forward and get involved in your community, start a little, learn a little bit about your community, and then you can move on to these kind of offices to be there. I wouldn't object to a term limit locally if that was the case, but I think there's merit to it. You want to hang on to those people that have got some special abilities or something, or getting the job done in certain areas with it. So that's something you have to weigh. That you wouldn't hurt my feelings if you said they're going to have a term limit for a mayor. I just hope you don't do it. You know, let me have 6 years. Other than that, I don't have focus on that. I think we want to get people involved in government. We'd get a lot of people involved in government. That's good for the community. You get new ideas and everything of it. But Congress and this Minnesota legislature certainly need that help.
Andrew.
Term limits are a yes, just like everybody else said, so you can have the good and the bad, and you can vote out the bad if you don't want them.
Okay. Does anyone else in our audience tonight have any questions for our candidates? Yes.
My question has to do with the winter that's coming up. In the past winters I've spent in Nashwauk. And my address is on a street, on 3rd Street, but my doors are on York Avenue. My question is, why are the streets, the sidewalks on the streets cleaned off in the wintertime, but not the avenues?
Personally, I wasn't aware that that was the case, that they're not doing it on the avenues.
And I'm not sure that they don't do any of the avenues. I am very sure that they don't do York Avenue. They go down 3rd Street on both sides, but they don't go on York Avenue. And part of my problem is that when the snowplow comes, all the snow is, I'm on a corner lot, and all the snow is plowed up on the York side of my yard.
They don't do that.
But we also have calendar parking. And so with all that snow, they leave us, room enough for 1 or 2 cars to park in front of our house. But the rest of the thing is blocked. And so we are very limited on where we can park.
I have a lot of,
That's something that I have been concerned about for years. Never.
I have a lot of empathy for what you're saying there, and I know the concern with that. It's a real issue. I would add to that by saying this: the problem is compounded by the fact that our city crew is certainly we're down to half staff. We've only got 2 people left. We've already had discussions. I had several discussions with the city administrator about this. I don't know that we're going to be able to plow this sidewalks this year with the amount of staff that we have. We don't have dollars to add temporary staff to do those kind of things. That's going to be an issue because people like us that are elderly, it's very difficult for us. It's very tough for me. I'll admit to get out 3 times and plow the street because every time I shovel out, it goes right by again and shovels me in again. So it's an issue.
Because we want to keep this as a candidate forum.
Right.
So why don't we address how you would like to see the city address snow plowing problems for the winter?
Okay.
I'll take it right now. We're down to 2 employees, 2 are on sick leave. They're gonna, if it takes, instead of, they go out most time it snows, they're out by 6 o'clock in the morning. They have all the streets open and everything else. I'm saying by 9 o'clock in the morning, well, they take care of the main street first. They push it all up. They take care of all the alleys and everything else. As far as the avenues you're talking about, As long as I've lived in Nashua, they have never plowed the avenue streets because now the sidewalks, there's no place to put the snow first of all, because it's a curb. You got a 4-foot sidewalk. The only place they can put the snow would be in their yard. We had people complain because they got fences were broken, or else they'd have to come by your house. We'll say they come from the east to the west. They blow all the snow into your driveway where your garage is. You'd be up here complaining, you wrecked my garage door. I'm just using you for example. It is, but that's about all they can do. And they've been doing a good job. I don't have nothing against the street department. They'll get it done. Might not get it done on the first day. They'll get it done. If it snows on a Saturday, they'll come and just open the main streets up and everything else. Come Monday or Tuesday, they do most of the sidewalks. And they have the time. Plus, they have other things to watch for. One guy, one city employee, and you gotta take care of all the water and all the sewer and everything else every day. So it leaves you one employee. That's about all I have to say on it right now.
Greg,
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to say that. Yeah, I didn't realize that avenues, sidewalks were not plowed. And I mean, I've lived here all my life, so, but I think that the way I would start to address it is, I think that we need input from that department. It's easy to sit up here and say, this is what I think they should do and this is what I think they shouldn't do. But I think that you need input from any department, depending upon if we're talking about the city offices, if we're talking about the police department or the ambulance crew. I'm always an advocate for getting those people involved, especially in a town this small. I mean, it's not like we got to get together 60 employees to have a meeting, you know. I mean, we're talking 3-4 people with some of the council or the whole council and say, what can we do to help solve this problem? You know, other than just saying, well, we need to hire 2 more people. So, which is,
We just can't do it.
yeah. So, but I still think that it's a legitimate question that they need to be involved in that conversation, mainly out of respect for them.
Sheila.
I agree. Sounds like a good plan to me. I know that it's a lot when I don't have to do it. My husband does it. I'm not going to pretend that I'm out shoveling the sidewalk because I'm not. But I know that it's a lot. I mean, he's a strong guy and he got real sick of it last winter. You know, he was sick of it. And besides ours, he does the neighbors and he's, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's harder when you're in your specific yard situation is just sort of a nexus for all the snow. It's, I don't know, but I totally agree that you've got to talk to the department that actually does the work. And that's the anti-micromanaging like Cal was talking about. You've got to talk to the people that do the work rather than dictating from the top what great idea I think I have. So
And I think I was more interested in finding out as potential candidates, what you think about the idea of the street sidewalks being plowed, but not the avenues.
yeah, I don't know why that. I did notice that though last winter. And I just didn't know if it was all of them or just the one I was walking on that wasn't done, but I don't know why it's not. Maybe there's a good reason. I don't know.
I apologize. I wasn't aware of that. We will have that discussion with the crew and just see what might be. So if you can't come to the council meetings, watch. And we're on the programs with the council meeting because we will talk about that sometime in the future here. But we'll get the staff in and talk about the issues that are with it and see what perhaps we can do with it or why it's been that way. Can't answer that now.
Andrew.
Yeah, none of the avenues except for Central are plowed by the city employees, and that's because not just the businesses, when the county comes through at 5 a.m, this is a county highway, they don't come back and clean the sidewalk. So all that snow would be up to your buildings. And what Ed was saying, that there is no median between this road on most avenues and houses or garages, and stuff would get broken. But there is ways around it, and you would have to sit with the street crew and figure that out. We have a snow blower attachment. I mean, they could be blowing in the back of their trucks when, if that's something they have time to do.
we have any more questions from the audience?
I'm wondering, how you feel about the construction of the new school.
Okay, Andrew, we'll start with you.
I think we do need a new school. It's not something I'd like to discuss up here.
Yeah.
Me? Well, I was privileged to be asked by the school to serve on the committee. Ben DiNucci as commissioner and myself were asked to help them in the site development, and then the choice of where that was going to go and exactly what it's going to look with. And as a council, we've always felt there was a need for us to collaborate with the school and work closely with them. So we actually were a part of that site selection in the end with it. And I know it's, again, big money that's being spent that when we're looking for money for other projects as well, each community only gets so much, and that's, it's going to set you back, makes it more difficult for us. But education for children is important. New schools are an important part of education, and it's long overdue in our community. So I support the effort to have a new school. What's going to happen with that existing building is a whole nother question. We are having conversations with engineers and architectural firms that we've already retained. We're having discussions with school administrators, and I think the council will be having future meetings with the school board as a whole to just kind of talk about the future of that building a couple of years from now, or where it goes and what's going to happen with it. But if the question is, how do we feel about the school? Yes, I support the school.
I like old buildings, so I'm not, the first one on the bandwagon to build something brand new, but it's already a done deal. So how I feel about it is sort of moot.
I worked in those old buildings.
Yeah.
It wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
My grandfather went there, my father went there, we went there, our kids went there.
Mhm.
Greg.
Yeah, I've all 5 generations of my family went to school there too. So, but I think that this council in the past has expressed their opinion as to whether they support the project or not. Just recently, not too long ago, we donated the property in order to bridge the public road to the site. So and the city being involved with Cal on that board. So I think that we never had any contention in the council as to whether we would support it or not. Now, when you start talking about, like Sheila says, old buildings versus new buildings, that's a personal point of view.
Mhm.
But when you sit up on the council or you sit on a board, you kind of sometimes, even though everybody thinks it's your personal view, you need to take that out of the equation and look at it in an objective way. And so it's, again, that's one of those topics that's a double-edged sword, are you Republican or Democrat? I mean, that's kind of the, so one way it cuts and the other way it does too. But I think that the council was very supportive of it.
I'm supportive of it 100% because if you're gonna bring a brand new school in here, people are gonna have to, some of these teachers and stuff want to build houses. Bozich's property up there, ready to go for 10 other houses. Other businesses want a thing, there's empty lots in Nashwauk and everything else. It's the only way you're gonna get any movement. If you don't have something new coming in your town, we're dead. That's what I can say about it. I can go on for hours, but 2 minutes ain't not enough time.
Okay, well, we are getting close to wrapping things up here. So, as I take some water.
No questions, Jamie?
What I would like to do now is give each of you 2 minutes to tell us why we should vote for you. You don't have to take the whole 2 minutes. And also repeat your name for our Facebook Live because it got cut off at the beginning, so. And we'll just go down the line from left to right.
Ed Ball. Why should you vote for me? Well, lived here all my life. I built a brand new house on First Street. Been on many committees here. I've been past city clerk here. I know what's going on in this town. On a Public Utilities Commission. Worked on the ESSER project and talking about going back even an ESSER project. If they would start putting taconite pellets out and everything else, there's a franchise fee from the city of Nashwauk. And that franchise fee would be almost half of our budget. It could be used for drop the budget altogether. But it's a big audit there and everything else. And I'd like to see the project finished, and I like to, if I get bid, I hope the city council lets me sit on the commissions I do right now. I'm on the zoning commission in Nashwauk. I'm on the public utilities commission. And right now, like we're working with Lone Pine to come into Nashwauk. I'd like to finish them up if I can. It'd be up to the city council there if they'll let me stay on. My term's up at the end of the year. See what happens.
Well, I think that Greg Hablum, I think that, you know, my background with the council here, with my education, with my business experience, I do think that I have something to offer to the council. I think that I've proven over the last 16 years that, you know, I do have, you know, something to offer. I hope that you still consider that. And secondly, I'm not afraid to make the hard decisions. You may not agree with me. And, you know, there's a lot of times I sit up here and I argue with Councilman Bruns. You would think that we don't get along, but in actuality, we do. But we disagree. Disagreement, you know, with disagreement comes discussion. With discussion comes, you know, solutions. So I'm not afraid to take a stand on certain things and be the maybe the odd man out, and sometimes be the grumpy one that's on the council. But you know what? That's what you put me here for. And you know, if I'm put in again, I will continue to do exactly that same thing. So, and I appreciate your support.
Sheila.
Well, I'm Sheila Jensen, and I am fairly new to town compared to everyone else. I love to learn new things, and I ask a lot of questions, and because that's how you learn things. And I'm not afraid to say I don't know when I don't know. I don't pretend to know things I don't know. And so I love learning, and I love asking questions. And I think those things, and just a perspective just from having lived somewhere else, that's not a bad thing. I really do appreciate the years and years and probably decades of experience that's on this council already. And that's impressive and enviable, really. I mean, I think cities are lucky to have people that are willing to serve for year after year. So I just would like to bring a fresh perspective and ask questions.
Al.
Kelvin Sari, been mayor for 4 years. I am asking for the opportunity to continue on for your mayor for 2 more years. I too feel the same way, that the voters will decide who they want to represent their city. I committed myself to representing this city in outside of the area in a greater perspective. I belong to a lot of organizations that can assist the city. If you look at my calendar over the last 2 years, I have averaged 20 to 24 meetings per month. I'm on the go just about every day. I spend about 8 days per month in St. Paul, advocating in the legislature for many different entities that go in. If you want to utilize my experience, I'm willing to do that for another 2 years. But the voters will decide, and the voters will get what they decide should represent them. And I would hope that I'd have the opportunity. I'm just saying, I'm making myself available to you. I'm proud myself of what I've accomplished the last 4 years. I'd be willing to continue for you, but that's up to the voters to decide. Thank you for the opportunity.
Andrew Elch, and not as busy as Cal. I'm working, man. When I do become mayor, I will be sitting in meetings, and I will be going out there for the people and trying to get funding and everything else. And I have nothing bad to say about this committee, years past, nothing. I just feel like I have some things I can change and appreciate your vote.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. Candidates, thank you so much for participating in this
Yeah.
forum tonight. And that ends our program tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.